Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. Last week, US President Trump announced the latest tariff rates. Major Asian garment exporting countries such as Vietnam, Cambodia, Bangladesh, and India will be subject to tariffs ranging from 19% to 25%. According to a report by Nikkei Asian Review, due to the impact of these tariffs, well-known companies that once heavily relied on Asian garment manufacturing bases, from fast retailing, the parent company of Uniqlo in Japan, to Adidas Group in Germany, are all affected. They are considering raising the prices of their products in the U.S. market. Data released by the U.S. International Trade Commission in the second half of last year shows that in 2023, the total value of U.S. clothing imports reached $79.3 billion US. Of this, Vietnam accounted for 18% of U.S. clothing imports, Bangladesh accounted for 9%, and India made up 6%. So what about Vietnam? Is it the largest manufacturing country for Adidas products sold in the U.S.? Trump set a 20% tariff rate on imports from Vietnam. Last week, Adidas CEO Golden admitted that these tariffs have already caused the company tens of millions of euros in negative impact, and that during the remainder of this year, the cost for Adidas to sell products in the US will increase by 200 million euros. Up until the end of May this year, the Japanese Shinsho Corporation in the US. There are a total of 74 Uniqlo stores, and out of Shinsho's 380 procurement factories, 60 are located in Vietnam, 27 in Bangladesh, and 19 in Cambodia. Recently, Shinsho's chief financial officer, Zhang Qijian, revealed that, considering the impact of tariffs and other factors, the company will make flexible price adjustments. Previously, in response to the Trump administration's tariffs, Shinsho had stockpiled goods in advance, but their autumn and winter products will definitely face. A company insider admitted frankly, we have no other choice but to raise prices. As for Nike, 50% of their footwear is produced in Vietnam and 27% in Indonesia. In June this year, Nike said that U.S. tariffs would add $1 billion in costs to the company. Clothing retailer Gap also stated that tariffs could increase their costs by $250 million to $300 million. In late July this year, German company Puma revealed that they were also affected by tariffs. Their company's performance is expected to shift from a previously forecasted profit to a loss. Puma also estimates that tariffs will add 8,000 euros in costs for their company. Nikkei Asian Review believes that, apart from raising prices in the U.S. market, there may really be no other options for these products. In June this year, Nike already announced that it would start raising prices on products in the U.S. market to cope with the impact of tariffs. Sweden's H&M also said it is considering raising prices in the U.S. market. On August 3, the Press Trust of India reported that Textile Minister Singh will meet with industry insiders to analyze the impact of the U.S.'s 25% import tariff on India's textile industry. The U.S. is the largest export market for Indian apparel and textiles, accounting for 25% of India's total exports in this sector. Previously, India set a goal to boost textile exports to $100 billion by 2030. In addition to the 25% tariff, some people in the Indian industry are also concerned about possible further U.S. actions due to India's imports. They are worried that the U.S. might impose so-called punitive tariffs on Indian oil imports as well. Currently, India's tariff rates are already higher than those of its textile export competitors like Vietnam, Indonesia, and Bangladesh. Among India's neighbors, Bangladesh's exports are highly dependent on textiles. According to Nikkei Asia Review, textile exports such as garments account for over 90% of Bangladesh's total exports, and the U.S. is its largest export market. A report released by Bangladesh's Center for Policy Dialogue in late July stated that Bangladesh has over 100 garment companies that are completely dependent on the U.S. market for survival. About 300 companies, with more than half of their exports destined for the U.S. market, believe that in the face of U.S. tariffs, Bangladeshi companies will further increase their exports to the EU. Bangladeshi companies say they have already started expanding into other markets, including Australia and Japan. The head of one garment company, Ibrahim, said that in the face of the Trump administration's trade policies, Bangladesh's garment industry needs to conduct a comprehensive reassessment. By adopting the right strategies, Bangladesh has the ability to turn challenges into a driving force for transformation. To sum up, the tariff policies promoted by Trump have undoubtedly increased tax revenue for the U.S. government, but for companies doing business in the U.S. or trading with the U.S., things have become much tougher. If they choose to raise prices, sales might drop. If they don't raise prices, they'll have to absorb the tariffs themselves. In the long run, companies that have other options will try to reduce their exposure as much as possible. America's reliance on its own market and the reduction of its role in global trade will eventually weaken its influence around the world. In the end, is it really beneficial for American voters to support Trump? Sorry, but before they see manufacturing jobs returning, they'll first have to deal with higher price tags on all sorts of goods. In addition, Trump's use of tariffs as a big stick was originally intended to force China to make concessions, but clearly, this strategy hasn't worked. According to MainlandObserver.com, with the reciprocal tariffs imposed last week. With the new restrictions on transshipment and the finalized reciprocal tariffs, Chinese manufacturing has actually become more. According to a Financial Times report on August 4, in recent years, many companies have adopted a China Plus One strategy. The so-called China Plus One strategy refers to countries like the US, Europe, and Japan, which since the 1990s have concentrated their investments in various industries in China, now shifting some of that investment to other emerging economies such as Vietnam, India, and Mexico. The aim is to avoid the risks that come with an overly concentrated supply chain. The US has imposed tariffs ranging from 10% to 40% on Southeast Asian countries, which has already reshaped the business landscape in the region, eroding manufacturers' profit margins and reducing their incentive to move production out of China. Louis Liu, chief economist specializing in China at Oxford Economics, said that the China Plus One strategy will face tremendous pressure, and some companies will look for even more distant alternatives. New manufacturing bases, but many companies will end up returning to China, since the upfront costs of entering new markets are going to be sky-high. Many Chinese companies had increased their overseas investments back when Trump imposed a 145% tariff on Chinese goods, but now they say the rise in Southeast Asian tariffs has caught them off guard. A representative from a shoe company in Fujian said that this year they opened a second, even larger factory in Cambodia. Hey, most of our American clients have asked us to shift their orders to Southeast Asia, but with the latest tariffs, customers are now hesitant to place orders in Cambodia. According to the report, a sense of unease has already spread to buyers. The CEO of a leading procurement service provider headquartered in Belgium, Lubua, said that in the US. In the first week, there was panic as people rushed to find new suppliers in Southeast Asia, but that feeling has now faded. Many clients have chosen to continue sourcing from China until things settle down. He said that before, he might get 10 calls a day, but now there are only 0 to a few. Clients are closely watching the tariff negotiations between the US, China, and other partners. If the result is that China's tariffs are 30% and Mexico's are 20%, they definitely won't waver and won't move. On July 31st, Trump signed an executive order confirming the imposition of so-called reciprocal tariff rates on multiple countries and regions. Myanmar and Laos were hit with reciprocal tariffs as high as 40%, while Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines face tariffs of 19%. As one of the biggest beneficiaries of the China Plus One investment strategy, Vietnam's tariff is set at 20%. In addition, the executive order also states that if any country or region tries to circumvent tariffs by routing goods through a third party, their products will be hit with a 40% transshipment tax. There are lighting and gift manufacturers, like Quanzhou Yucheng Gift Company, Limited, which has operations in both Cambodia and Fujian. Their sales representative said that even though the 19% tariff still affects factories in Cambodia, there are still some advantages, but this has made competition with Vietnamese manufacturers even fiercer. A toy and electronics manufacturer headquartered in Hong Kong said that the company has already started discussions with partners this year to shift part of their orders from their factory in Dongguan, China, to Indonesia, in order to reduce supply chain risks. But the benefits of doing this are gradually disappearing, as the company still needs to ship most of its components from China. According to reports, the tariffs imposed on goods in transit mean that the company will have to move even more of its production processes to Indonesia. At the same time, buyers want them to share the cost of the new tariffs, which will significantly increase costs. The manufacturer said this is a double blow, we're taking hits on both sides. However, Li Wan, who runs a procurement business in eastern Zhejiang, said that additional tariffs on high-end fabrics and textiles have little impact on China's dominant position, because very few countries can match China's technological capabilities. He said, there are no competitors, no one can produce the same things as China. The Financial Times pointed out that some manufacturers who previously chose to stay in China now feel fortunate. Zhao Fen, who owns 4 toy factories in Dongguan, said that her classmates have all set up factories in Vietnam, but now they all regret it. The constantly rising real estate costs, less efficient labor, and higher tariffs have increased costs for many businesses. She added that tariffs have had a minimal impact on low-cost Chinese goods and have not weakened demand from American buyers. She said, in fact, for our products, it's basically as if no extra tax was added. The U.S. actually seems quite friendly toward China. Fazekli, the operations manager of an American home goods manufacturer, said that this year they've already shifted orders to Cambodia, but at the cost of flexibility, efficiency, and logistical convenience. He bluntly stated that for the next batch of orders, he'll pay attention to the tariff differences, and if the numbers are close, he'll choose to produce in China. Regarding the U.S.-initiated trade war, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Gui Jiaquan reiterated at a regular press conference on August 1 that China has always believed there are no winners in a tariff or trade war. Engaging in protectionism harms the shared interests of all countries. The conclusion is that, whether manufacturers choose to shift production to other parts of the world to maximize profits, or to places least affected by U.S. tariffs, very few manufacturers would consider moving production back to the U.S. Trump's claim that imposing tariffs is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. is just empty talk. He's just saying whatever comes to mind.